I have been training consistently for over 15 years, and I have made a ton of mistakes. I have made mistakes that led to injuries, overuse injuries, or just undermined my progress and where I wanted to be. And in today's video, I'm going to share exactly how I trained on a special forces team, the mistakes I made, and how I would train if I were to go back and do it again, knowing what I know. So before I dive into it, I want to give some context on how I fell into this trap and how a lot of Green Berets and a lot of, guys in the Q course and aspiring Green Berets fall into the same trap as myself. So after selection, obviously everyone knows that selection requires very high endurance capacity, the ability to run, the ability to ruck, the ability to get those competitive times during gate week. When you start the Q course, the requirements change a little bit. There's not as many PT tests. You're not tested on your time nearly as much. And the focus is much more on training you to become a Green Beret. So the first couple phases of the Q course, when I went through, was SUT, Small Unit Tactics, and SEER School. Now, SUT is done. You go out to Camp McCall for a 6-week period, and it's basically like a mini ranger school. So you're going to be going to the field, eating MREs, carrying a heavy rucksack, just walking through the woods, things like that. You're not doing any physical training. Then SEER School, if you don't know what SEER School is, you're going to be deprived of food, deprived of nutrients. You're going to lose a lot of weight, right? So after SEER School, you go to MOS phase, and this is where it's more like 9 to 5, sitting in a classroom, doing your thing, learning your stuff, but you have evenings and weekends off. So when a lot of guys get to MOS phase, including myself, they want to gain back all of the lean mass and all of the muscle that they lost from SUT and SEER, as they should, right? That's a good thought process to take. However, the problem is it's really, really easy to start putting some mass on and then just want to put more and more and more mass on. So I'm sure the Q course guys, watching this video will resonate with this. But when you're in the Q course, you will see dudes do all kinds of crazy shit. You'll see dudes jump on SARMs. You'll see dudes jump on testosterone. I had a roommate that, had testosterone, was on testosterone throughout the Q course, getting absolutely freaking jacked. So you'll see a lot of guys just want to get jacked. They already made it, right? So they want to get to their team as big as they possibly can. Well, that's not the best route to take. Number one, when you come out of the Q course, you want to be the fittest guy on the team. You should have, very competitive 2 and 5 mile run times. Depending on your team sergeant, how old school they are, they might have you take a PT test or an SFPA when you get to the team and kind of assess you. And if you bomb that, you're going to be in for a rough time. So don't fall into that trap. I didn't fully fall into that trap when I was in the Q course. I built muscle throughout the MOS phase, and I really went into kind of the hypertrophy mindset. But one night we had, at the end of MOS, we had this like big barracks inspection, and they actually canceled or took us out of class early, and we had to go back to the Super Hooch, and there's like 200 people standing around this U-shaped thing, and a cadre who was not the most loved cadre by the students. I'll just say that. He was, yelling at everybody, going through, doing a barracks inspection. And I remember the only thing that dude ever said that really stuck with me is wait until you get to a team to get jacked. And the reason he said it is because he was going up into the Super Hooch, this barracks complex, and inside the pool table and inside a bunch of guys' rooms, he was finding testosterone, SARMs, all this stuff, right? So it's really easy to fall into that. But like he said, wait until you get to a team to get jacked. So I took that to heart. I was like, oh man, I know I'm getting slow. I know, during MOS phase, and I've really been focused on hypertrophy and putting on as much mass as I can. I haven't been running as much. I have gotten a little bit slower. So luckily that happened, and I got my run times back down. I got back into running. I'm very glad I did, because as soon as I graduated and got to group, my unit was in Afghanistan. So I signed in, I met them in Afghanistan, and I was running missions. Which brings me to my next point. What are the requirements of a Green Beret on an operational detachment alpha, right? In Afghanistan, many of the missions we ran were either flying or driving in. So we would land 1 to 2 kilometers away from the objective with our heavy ass kits and our packs full of ammo and all that stuff, usually weighing anywhere from 80 to 110 pounds of total gear. We walk low and slow through the Afghan night up to the village, spend hours clearing it, doing whatever we're doing, and then we retrograde back to another helicopter landing zone and get out of there, right? So when you look at the physicality required of that mission, you have to be able to carry heavy equipment over long distances and periods of time, more importantly, at a low and slow pace over uneven terrain, right? So what that entails is the strength capacity to carry the equipment, the endurance capacity to not burn out. Being fat adapted helps, which we can dive into in zone 2, and the specific conditioning so we don't develop those overuse injuries like IT band syndrome, lower back pain, whatever. So we get back from the deployment and we kind of have like a chill time. You know, post deployment, you're going to be in garrison, you're going to be chilling, whatever. Well, in my young, motivated self and always wanting to compete with the guys around me, not knowing much about training at that point, other than hypertrophy, I said I'm going to build a whole bunch of muscle. So I went into a 6-day per week hypertrophy plan. I was running a push-pull leg split. First 3 days, we were focused on heavy lifts. Second 3 days, we're focused on more higher rep range, 8 to 12, and really just trying to stimulate as much hypertrophy as I can. And inherently, there's nothing wrong with a hypertrophy plan. There's nothing wrong with focusing on building muscle, unless you're a Green Beret or you're a special operator on a team and going to be required to, at a moment's notice or in unknown timeframes, go out and perform under a ruck for long distances and periods of time. I was running twice a week and doing one ruck because I hunt and I was chasing elk through the mountains and things like that. So that was kind of my conditioning, which helped to keep me obviously in the game and conditioned for what we were doing. But what I noticed is through putting on that lean mass and adding a bunch of that weight, I started developing tightness, I started developing imbalances, I started developing hip instability, I started developing all of these issues that I didn't know what it was from, but as I started doing more and more on a team, that continued to spiral into injuries where years down the road, now I have bulging discs and sciatica and back pain, all this stuff that could have been completely avoidable had I trained properly throughout my time on a team. And a lot of guys do the same thing because although there are resources like Thor 3 and things like that, you're never really taught how to train as a Green Beret. So unless you want to dive into literature, start reading about it, whatever, you're not nobody's going to come and say, this is how you have to train. You train on your own. Most teams don't train as a team. And you just have a baseline understanding of, I need to work hard to get these results. After I experienced those injuries is like really where I started diving into training more than just running, more than just hypertrophy, and like trying to learn how to balance it and blend it all together, right? And now knowing what I know, I wish I could go back, but knowing what I know, here is exactly how I would train on a team. So instead of running a push-pull leg split 6 days per week, I would condense that. I'd drop that down to 3-4 days per week if you really want to emphasize strength. And I would focus on a full body split. This is going to enable us to do two things. One, increase the frequency that we're hitting these muscle groups without causing so much fatigue or soreness that's going to undermine our ability to do the job or our ability to recover and do the conditioning throughout the week. And two, it's going to enable us to get balanced stimulus on a weekly basis. Because when you're on a team, when you're in these environments, the likelihood of you being able to train 6 days a week for most weeks is not very high. You're going to spend a lot of time on the range. You're going to have late nights in the team room freaking filling out 1750s if you're a Charlie. You're going to be doing all of this stuff that's going to mess up your workout routine. So in a push-pull leg split, if you're missing days here and there, then you might be not getting leg stimulus that week, or you might be missing muscle groups, and over time that can lead to a lot of imbalances. For strength, I would implement the 5-3-1 method. 5-3-1 method is a great strength building method that is pretty relatively low volume and has intensity increasing with each 4 week phase, with the third week being that peak week. And this is great to continue making strength gains on those big movements of bench, squat, deadlift, and overhead press, and primarily focuses in rep ranges of 1 to 5. It's really good because we can make those strength gains and not develop so much soreness or fatigue that, again, is going to undermine our ability to go out and perform. Then after the big mover in each workout, then I would do the hypertrophy work or the accessory work, whatever I want to work on. If I want to get big arms, if I want to get big shoulders, that's where I would do it. Then I would finish with some GPP or general physical preparedness, carries, sled pushes, things like that, to ensure that we're still able to do the things that we need to be able to do for the job. With these training sessions, I would include prehab work, which is what I do today. And it's probably why I feel more pain-free and like my performance is higher than I was on a team. But as a warm-up, I would include the prehab work. So if you have tight hips, if you have hip instability, if you have poor ankle flexion or dorsiflexion, if you have any shoulder pain, whatever, that's where I would address it. I'd spend 5-10 minutes working with bands, lateral banded walks, banded clamshells, external, internal rotation of the shoulders, whatever. I would include that prehab work in there and then go into the main block of the workout. Conditioning wise, I would focus more on zone 2. When I was coming up in the military, nobody really talked about zone 2, but it is a great tool to use to ensure that we're not overextending ourselves or creating too much fatigue, and that we're in this aerobic or under our aerobic threshold. So we're becoming more fat adapted, which increases our endurance capacity, recoverability, and able to perform under those rucks for those long distances, periods of time, and recover quickly. So I would probably do an 80-20 split or a 90-10 split, 80% coming from those low to moderate intensity miles. So with this could look like one 45 to 60 minute zone 2 session per week, and then one 60 to 90 minute zone 2 session per week. One of those could be running, one of those could be biking, rowing, hiking, freaking rucking, whatever. And then for the high intensity work, I would either have one interval day, or I would tack on the conditioning, maybe do like 8 rounds on the assault bike of 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off, with the strength days. So to sum it up, I would do 4 strength days. I would do 2 zone 2 days. And then I would either have an interval day on the same day as a strength day, or I would focus on that high intensity interval training paired with those strength days. I would implement the 5-3-1 method and then have a full body split. So I'm doing strength block, accessory work, and then GPP at the end of those workouts, maybe finishing it up with some high intensity interval training. But the biggest thing is to continue training for the job, because as a tactical athlete, as a guy on a team, as a freaking infantryman, whatever, there is no off season, and you don't really know when the next mission or the next training event or the next time you're going to have to strap a ruck on and freaking climb a mountain is going to be. So continuing to ensure that you're not overdoing it and creating those long-term overuse issues, but we're keeping our body nice and conditioned and primed and ready to do that at a moment's notice is optimal. Once you get out of the Army, there's going to be plenty of time to get as jacked as you want and train like a bodybuilder and do all that stuff. These days, for me personally, I train pretty much the exact way I just told you I would train on a team, because it's the way that makes me feel best. I feel like my performance is great, my energy levels are good, I have no pain, my back pain is gone, and I can continue doing all of the things that I want to do, including going hiking, hunting in the mountains, whatever. And a lot of the videos I share is really just sharing those lessons learned along the way. And our goal with Infinite Grit is to combine the real world experience with the science-backed strength and conditioning. We have 2 other Green Beret coaches on the team and a strength coach who has been with the 75th Ranger Regiment for the last 13 years. Prior to that, he worked with the Cleveland Browns and Chicago Bears. So if you want custom programming, custom nutrition, and the mentorship along the way, book a call with myself using the link below. Other than that, I hope you guys got something from this video. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you very soon.